made by Marner. Holy mackerel!
It is Gilmore waiting around the net, waiting. He's open.
Gilmore! Johnny Toronto! I wonder if they can hear it on Long Island.
Great move! What a goal! Beauty! Austin Matthews!
Bless you, boys! What a game!
Welcome to episode 95 of the Maple Leafs Hot Stove podcast. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrelli, and we also have Alec Brownscombe joining us for a bit of an off-season episode. Perhaps not the last one, but a lot has happened since we last talked. We're going to get into, what happened with the loss of the Florida Panthers, the firing of Brendan Shanahan, what Brad Treliving had to say, and then ultimately where the Leafs go from here. Maybe not 100% granular on every possible target. That could be for a later day. But we're not far from the offseason being in full swing. So let's start. I'll go to you, Anthony, first. Let's start a little bit on what we feel like happened to Toronto Maple Leafs against the Florida Panthers that got them booed from the playoffs. The reason that we're not talking about them today, last time we recorded the podcast, they're up 2-0. I don't think either of us felt like that series was over, but it was a good time to be optimistic. And things, they really rolled downhill. We had a couple of, kind of quasi-typical Leafs performances at home, a version of a script a lot of fans are familiar with. So what did you see that made it impossible for the Leafs to kind of continue the success that they were having when we were last recording?
Well, when we previewed the series, one of the things we flagged was how healthy is Matthew Tkachuk, because the balance tipping of the healthiness of Tkachuk had a significant domino effect. Like, Florida was a 3-line team. Now, I don't actually think Matthew Tkachuk was particularly good. And the most I noticed him was when he spoke after Game 7 throughout that entire series. He had a few okay moments, but he obviously is not healthy. And all that said is, end of the day, Florida had 3 lines and the Leafs really had 2. And that was kind of how it played out. That third line, Brad Marchand led the team in scoring. Listerainen was really good. Anton Lundell was really good. And, the Leafs just obviously couldn't keep up with that level of depth. And then this will kind of dovetail eventually into our offseason discussions, but you pay the top of the lineup so much money. And the reason that you do is because those are supposed to be high-end, needle-moving players. And ultimately they weren't. So, that's kind of the crux of it. Like, we spoke about it when Ottawa came back a little bit in the series, and I was like, well, there's no point of changing anything now. Like, either these guys are going to figure it out or they're not. And they did work their way through that series. But ultimately, when Florida pushed, they couldn't get it done. They did do it in Game 6. Matthews scores a big goal, but, the allocation of the money says that the top guys have to get the job done. And they didn't, and their bottom of the lineup is not good enough because they don't pay the bottom of their lineup enough money to be needle difference good. And so we're kind of just at a crossroads of, well, this is what it is, and this is what it has been. Like, they constantly run a 2-line team, and the only way that it works is if those guys are amazing, and they weren't. And if you kind of look at it, it's like, were Matthews and Marner significantly different than Barkov and Reinhart in that series? Like, they basically produced the same across the board, right? Like, special teams value, like, you could argue pretty easily that Matthews and Marner relatively matched Barkov and Reinhart. The difference is they make like a combined like $6 million more money than those guys. And so, that's the difference between Anton Lundell on your third line and Steven Lorentz on your third line. So that's really what it's been this whole time with the group.
And I think also the distribution of when that production happened is also part of the story, right? Like, you can say, oh, they approximately produced what the Florida's top guys produced, but that was really front loaded. And we can talk about that. That Matthews goal did feel like a bit of a big moment for him, coming up in that huge time when they desperately needed a goal. Like, he's rarely been the guy who's done that, and he did it, and that's great. But generally speaking, from sort of 4 on, they weren't matching up to Florida when they have to, as you mentioned, not just match, but do better for it to make sense.
I think the other thing too, which I'm sure Alec will talk about, is just like the magnitude of how bad that they were in Game 5 and 7. Like, if they were right there neck and neck with Florida, I would be borderline banging the table. Like they're right there. But they were so unbelievably bad in game 5 and 7. Like that has significant scars. Like to me, last year, Boston game 4 had significant scars as well. Like I was at that game, fans booed. It was just as ugly. The Leafs did claw back and make it a series. You know, you had the injury issues and excuses of all that. But like game 5 and 7, like straight up two massive home games. And they were so utterly bad, like stunning. Like it was stunning to the degree of how bad they were that it's hard to look past it at this point.
Well, Alec, Anthony has thrown you a very fun topic to expound upon. How did you feel about those two sort of massive no-shows that tipped the series?
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure what I'd have to say other than what's already been said in terms of like how comfortable Florida looked in that kind of pressure-packed environment in game 5 or game 7. Like how totally unable the Leafs were able to play on their toes, win any battles, or sort of tilt the ice back the other way. Um, Besides maybe the 10-minute segment in the second part of the first period where maybe the Leafs had some degree of pushback, like the you could see it in Florida's game later in that series, and you could see it in Edmonton's game later in their series against Dallas in game 5. You kind of hear it in like the way Connor McDavid answers those questions that he was asked after the game, after they clinched the Western Conference Championship. Like these teams who have kind of been to the very end of that marathon, they really don't panic in these situations, and they don't expend any unnecessary emotional energy along the way. They just kind of calmly and ruthlessly execute. And I thought that's kind of, I don't want like the Leafs, there's a whole story that we should get into about the way the Leafs played game 7, but we should give Florida some credit. Like they were absolutely dialed in from the drop of that puck in game 7. I was as disappointed as I was in Toronto. I was equally impressed with the way that Florida approached that game and the way they executed inside that game. I guess the one thing I'd add, besides the obvious, which is Anthony already alluded to, which is like the Leafs aren't going to win any big games against any elite teams if their best players play the way that they played in that game with the series on the line. I do think, like, I understand all the discussion inside that kind of tree living press conference, and even in the Berube press conference was kind of about like the way the team performed when the season was on the line, like sort of the quote unquote critical moments within the playoff series in which the Leafs obviously fell short. I do think the one thing I would supplement that with is that like there are some wider season long concerns that I thought were kind of rearing their ugly head inside that game 7 and in the playoffs in general, frankly, that I don't think should be talked about, shouldn't be ignored, sorry, as we kind of talk about the wider issues that were at play there inside that series. Like I understand Tree Living talked a lot about sort of the changing the team's DNA inside the critical moments, and I get all that, but I'm kind of I guess I'm a big believer that in life in general, in the biggest sort of pressure packed moments of your life, you don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your preparation. And the Leafs, for me, did not possess the puck anywhere enough this year in general. Like they just didn't. You can argue that the basic shot attempts or the shot attempt metrics don't fully capture who is controlling the kind of critical areas of the ice. And I can take that argument to some extent, but to me it falls short of fully explaining away why they were right there all year long with the worst teams in the league for big parts of the season in terms of actually controlling 5-on-5 shot attempts.
Yeah.
Like when Florida looked like, to me, like they were in that game 5 environment, inside that game 7 environment, especially, they were really confident in playing to their identity. They knew they'd tilt the ice. They knew they'd establish their forecheck. They seemed really comfortable in executing that and knowing that they kind of stack the odds in their favor. It's really, really hard, in my view, to be comfortable in that kind of intense pressure-packed game 7 kind of environment when you're spending way too much of it inside of your own zone. Like especially in those kind of high emotion, high stakes situations, it allows one team to find its rhythm, to find its confidence, to find its comfort zone, to just play its game. And the other one is feeling like they're never fully comfortable in the game and they're kind of in a bad spot. Like I think there's like a psychological component to it that's at play in there. And I get that the Leafs, when we talked before the Florida series, we talked about how the Leafs, to their credit, were like a lot more comfortable staying patient, defending inside, defending their net front, waiting for offensive opportunities off of that kind of structure. But to me, you need more than that against the best teams in the league. Like you need to be able to make them uncomfortable by tilting the ice in your favor more. And it wasn't enough to say, oh, we'll hit these guys on the counterattack for rush goals or rush offense. I will say that, like, who knows
It
what
was for
happens
2
if,
games, but it's hard to win
sure,
4 and 7.
on top of those 2 games, who knows what happens in game 7 if like those early breakaways or odd man rushes that they have go not to the Leaf depth players, but go to Nyes or Marner or to William Nylander instead of Steven Lorentz, right? But
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Like it's a bit of a house of cards in the sense that's like, well, either we hit on a few of these homers
yeah,
or it looks like what it looked like.
that's what I'm saying. Like it's not the widest path to beating a team like Florida over 7 games. Like I like that the Leafs found different ways to score more with quick strike offense than they had in playoffs past, but they didn't have enough of that kind of like tilt the ice, shift over shift, momentum building until we kind of beat down the door kind of offensive activity going on. Like the Leafs all year long were a team that got hemmed in way too much all year long. Like I felt
Yeah.
some of it came home to roost there. Like I was saying, like you don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to your level of preparation, your level of training, or what you've been doing for most of the season. I felt like it's easy to lean on the narrative of like they don't deliver in the critical moments. And I think there is credibility to that argument, but I think there's also a whole part of this argument that shouldn't be ignored, which is that like these were some obvious issues all year long that were rearing their heads when the pressure was the highest and when the stakes were the highest. Like I'll never forget. There were some like injury excuses, I guess, at the time, but when they played like San Jose and Anaheim later in the season, there in a back-to-back, 2 of the worst teams in the league. Like we're not just the worst teams in the league, but 2 of the worst possession teams in the league. And the Leafs legitimately spent large portions of those games inside their own end. Like I remember flagging this to Anthony and Chuck. I had nauseum where I'd be like, "This isn't good. Like this can't be hand waved away, and like this is a problem." And I sort of reject the notion that, like, I get that Berube seemed to kind of push in the presser, like the season-ending presser there, that there was like it was basically like a few key breakdowns at critical moments.
We had
To
some
me,
structural breakdowns was really the way
no,
that he described it.
So
that way
dicey.
understates the problem.
Yeah,
The ice was completely tilted for the first 10 minutes of that game. The Leafs kind of found their way into it because they got some saves and they defended well for 10 minutes. And then the last 10 minutes, they got a good penalty kill and they started tilting the ice. They got some odd man looks. They got a couple breakaway opportunities that unfortunately didn't go in. But you're kidding yourself if you attribute that loss to a few key breakdowns in the second period. Like that's
they were
that's
thoroughly
not the
dominated.
story.
They were
No,
thoroughly
and
dominated.
I guess charitably, like some of it might be that process they were undertaking with Berube this season, where you're kind of going from a team that was generally a really strong possession team under Sheldon Keefe that kind of struggled to create playoff offense within that possession style when it actually mattered, and also who struggled to like manage risk inside their game and avoid the big mistakes in the big moments, to now they're a team that can be more comfortable without the puck. They're better at defending hard and protecting the net and creating offense off of that. And I think naturally there was going to be some overcorrection in that process. So I think that's kind of what we saw come home to roost when in game 7 to some extent. Like I'm I'm really curious to see what steps they take, not just in like their personnel alterations, but like in their tactical adjustments to actually start to tilt the ice more in their favor in terms of offensive zone possession and shot volume, because they seem to have the right defensive buy-in, the right defensive core, and the right goaltending, but they fundamentally, against a team like Florida, that did not possess the puck enough. And that came home to roost for me in game 7, as much as anything else.
Yeah, I mean, this is a stylistic thing I think we're going to talk about when we talk about Treliving's comments in particular. Like he mentioned a lot of like, we have learned to play a new style, and he was really championing that as if it's a major positive. And sure, they did win a playoff series that way, and Berube has his philosophy. But as you mentioned, like when the math is just that far against you, you can have better You can have better finishers. You can have better goaltending. And the goaltending they had all year was really good, but they still had relatively unproven guys. They were going against Bob in this series. So it was not necessarily any guarantee they were going to have better goaltending. And their better finishers were this group of guys who've chronically underperformed in these spots. And so when you're leaning on those two things, like it is a very tenuous way to go about it. And as much as you can say, Florida is going to win the 5-on-5. We're comfortable with that. They're going to possess the puck more. They're going to have more shot attempts. You know what? Like a lot of the goals that go in don't look like high danger shot attempts. So you can say we do a really good job of defending the middle of the ice. We do a really good job of preventing things from happening in the slot. We're comfortable. We know how to block shots. We're going to pack the house. We have the long defenders. We have the size back there. But if the math is tilted so far against you where the other team is getting way, way, way more shot attempts, like there's a good chance that some of those are going to bang off some legs. And some of those are going to, go through, Woll did not have a fantastic series. Was it his fault that they lost the series? I wouldn't put it there because I don't think it was that close a series, even though it
wasn't his fault, but he didn't help.
He didn't help. But like it's a 7-game series, but like let's be real, it was not that close a series. Like Living tried to present it as if it was a really close series. But to me, in game 1, I think they really won that game, deserved it. And then you're talking about 3 coin flip games, like game 2, game 3, game 6. Those could go either way, and they got a couple of those. And then the other games, in 5 and 7, Florida absolutely destroyed them. I don't know. So like at some point you have to, Alec, as you said, correct a little bit for that, because this style that they're championing has real limitations, and maybe we are seeing an exaggerated early version of it, but there has to be some level of adjustment here.
I think fundamentally to that point, one thing we kind of talked about as the year progressed and those numbers didn't improve, like there was a portion early in the season when Austin Matthews was playing where the Leafs were basically hovering around a top 10 possession team in the league. Their breakouts were really crisp early on. I thought like Ekman-Larsson was unreal to start the season. Like they looked good, right? That was when they kind of had the different D pairings. They had Riley Tanev and they had Ekman-Larsson with McCabe for quite a while there early on. And I actually liked the way that they were moving the puck out of the zone. And then Matthews got hurt, and then the numbers, they fell off a cliff. And you kind of went, well, Matthews isn't playing. Like John Tavares is your 1C. They're finding ways to win games. Like Nikita Gobrinkin is in the lineup, and like half the forward group is like AHL players. And then Matthews came back, and it's like, well, they're not really getting better, but Matthews is like clearly playing hurt. And then it's like, well, Matthews is playing in the Four Nations, so he's probably like, he should be fine. And the numbers, that was around the time period of they played Anaheim, San Jose, to Alec's point. And it's like, well, the numbers really haven't improved. And then one thing, and I know Alec knows this because he transcribes all the interviews, one thing we started hearing a lot from Craig Berube was like, we weathered the storm. And it'd be like a period a game. And I know, Nick, we were talking about it'd be like a period a game. It'd be like, well, we weathered the storm. And it's like, if you look back to game 7, it's like, we weathered the storm early. I'm like, why did Florida have the storm?
Why was there storm? The storm wasn't inevitable.
You were in Toronto. You were at home. The crowd was fired up. Like the whole
and just like exactly what I was saying there, maybe not as well articulated as what you just said, but like inside a game 7 environment, if you concede that kind of zone time, like psychologically, that's a massive advantage to concede to the other team. Like they are in this really high emotion, high stakes situation. This other team you're allowing to find its rhythm, to find its comfort, to find its, to find its style of play and establish its identity inside that game. And you're sitting there being like, geez, like we haven't touched the puck yet. And it's almost the end of the first period.
Shot attempts for like 25-0 to start that game.
I don't care how well you're defending at all. If you don't touch the puck enough inside the most high pressure point of your season, if you come out and you don't touch it for 10 minutes, you're probably not going to win the game.
And I think I don't want to go fully down the rabbit hole right now. Like obviously we got a lot to chat about because like Shanahan got let go, like the Brad Treliving press conference, Mitch Marner, like all that stuff. But like I am curious as part of all this, Lane Lambert just got hired by Seattle, right? So we flagged a few times after the deadline. I was like, how is Scott Laughton not on the PK? Like you don't run a complicated system. This is a 10-year NHL veteran. Like just put him on the PK. And he was clearly good at it. Like Lawton is a genuinely good penalty killer, like really, really good penalty killer. And this should have been a top 10 unit easily throughout the season, my estimation, especially when you're forcing Matthews to do it basically all year when healthy, and Marner, and you're giving them huge minutes, and you have Tanev and your goaltending is good. It wasn't. It was much better in the playoffs, which was great to see, including using Lawton. But Lambert was also responsible for some of their defensive zone concepts. And they basically played like the Islanders did when they went to back-to-back conference finals, except the Islanders didn't have like William Nylander and Austin Matthews. Like they were looking at much less talented players, we'll call it. Looking at Brock Nelson being like, yeah, you're gonna retreat in a shell and we're gonna look for our opportunities to score. And that's fair. But guys
That's
like
out
Matthews,
of necessity, right?
yeah,
Like that's because
that
that's what made sense with the roster they had. And
that was
sometimes
their lineup. The Leafs didn't have that lineup though.
yeah, sometimes it has felt like a bit of a, round peg, square hole situation where they've decided like this is the way to win. This is quote unquote winning hockey. And in my opinion, most sports, it makes a lot more sense to build from the players you have and build your schemes around that than saying like, I have the master plan and we're going to shove these players into it. And that's what it's felt like a bit at times. And we'll see, the DNA will change, as they say, and we'll get into that a little bit further. I do want to cut that rabbit hole off at the knees though, and go to Shanahan, because this is, I think, a relatively expected result here. Shanahan not returning to the team, but it is a major figure, the president of the hockey team, who has been there for an extremely long time, who is no longer in power, and that is going to empower Brad Treliving and change things a little bit in terms of the decision making around this team. Alec, was there, I want to first want to ask, is there any level of surprise? I don't really think there is. So instead, like, what is your overall reaction to the absence of Shanahan at this point and moving forward with it seems like kind of a sleeker front office structure?
Yeah, like I do want to give Shanny his credit for the early years of that rebuild. Like he got so much right in that 2014 to 2000, I'd say 18, 19 sort of period where he could really recruit some big names to the cause. Like he helped restore the pride, the appeal to being a Maple Leaf. Like he committed the franchise to that 2015, 2016 tank.
The
He recruited,
alumni
yeah,
relations with like
he
Dave Keon
recruited
and
the
stuff.
biggest head coach in hockey at the time to manage the media, to run the interference for the players, to set the expectations and the higher standard at the time. Like it worked out brilliantly. Like let's be clear, like that was as perfectly as he could have started the rebuild in Toronto, which is a tough market to sell on that concept. Like he did a really, really good job on it. Like he perfectly executed a tank without throwing all the useful pieces overboard and losing for like an indeterminate amount of time. I really felt that he was sort of a local guy who had his finger on the pulse of the fan base in the early going, like how to, like Anthony was saying, like how to fix the alumni relationships, how to get the wrongs righted in terms of like the way the team honors its history. And there's a lot that he deserves a lot of credit for. Um, Obviously in hindsight, like the core contracts and the Dubas Keefe pivot, those are the big ones that you kind of look back on and say like this could have or should have gone in a different way or been handled a little bit differently. I'm not sure how much of an appetite we have on this podcast to get into the minutia of that, and like it's obviously dead and buried now, but he ultimately failed to secure the buy-in he needed from the core players to make it a comfortable fit cap wise. And when you combine that with the flat cap, like the path became too narrow to build around a group that frankly kind of needed the core group to deliver those kind of McDavid and Draisaitl, McKinnon and Rantanen style runs to make that entire model work underneath that flat cap. I guess in his defense, like it wasn't the craziest notion that wasn't the craziest bet to make, that like Matthews, Marner, and Nylander and Tavares could do what those guys that I referenced could have done. Clearly, it kind of proved to be the wrong mix of personalities and the wrong mix of playing style complements among that core four group. But I don't think it was like a crazy notion that he had there. It just didn't really work out. And like ultimately someone had to fall on the sword after you're looking at 3 general manager changes, you're looking at 3 head coaching changes without a different enough playoff result. And the other thing I would just add is like just how ugly, kind of like Anthony said right off the top, like how ugly those game 5 and game 7 receptions were from their fans. Like you have a year there where there is genuine optimism. The team is different under Craig Berube. Like there's some style changes that are apparent. The blue line personnel is obviously improved. Goaltending's really good. The general way in which they're kind of buying into defending and blocking shots, and the fact that he didn't mail in so many nights that they would have previously mailed in against like inferior opposition, and they had actually gone through and won the division. They overcome the adversity in round 1 of losing 2 games in a row and everyone doubting them that, oh, this is the same old shit. They're probably going to lose this series. They step up in game 7 and win that series, albeit that's obviously a heavily favored series that they were in. But to go and lay the eggs so badly that they laid in games 5 and 7, where you have beers and jerseys and shit being thrown on the ice. There's choruses of boos, despite the fact that like all the momentum in terms of the fan reception and the fan perception seem to be kind of trending the right way all year long. To have it end in that fashion, to me, that at the end of the day, that's not a good look for your brand.
It's clear the fans ran him out.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, Shanahan's job was to be a steward of the brand, and that's a horrible look. After 9 months of great work, it seemed like to have it end in that way is just unacceptable. At the end of the day, it was way too ugly. At the end of the season, the Leafs were the laughing stock again. Their own, like the fans took way too much heat for the way, like they did not bail on that team at all until the series was clearly over. Like they even 3-1 down in the third period there, I thought the Leafs, the fans were still giving them a lot of energy and a lot of momentum as best they could. But like to have an end so ugly like that, and the lasting image fundamentally, if you like your 2024, 2025 season, the lasting images are your players getting peppered with beers in their own jerseys while play is still going on in game 7. And you're the president of the organization 10 plus years into it. Like that's a tough look. You're the steward of the brand. It's not good enough. It's ugly. Someone's head has to roll. And I'm not saying that he did a lot of things right, but fundamentally it was clear this was the end of the line.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he did a great job early on. Like he definitely helped restore the brand, but just when it came time to trying to push things over the edge, just couldn't do it. And like obviously we're gonna look back at a few things and lament them. Just the Kyle Dubas hire in general. Well, not hire, the Kyle Dubas promotion to general manager, and then everything that followed after that, contract wise, the handling of their top draft picks and their inability to get them to sign team friendly deals as RFAs is just going to go down as like an all time franchise head shaker. I forget the exact quote, Alec, but I know you flagged it before to me, where Shanahan was talking going into those negotiations about like everyone, like leaving a little piece of the pie, so to speak, to make everything work and to get the team where they need to go on the whole. And that never came close to happening.
Shanahan's quote was like, when I get together with my buddies from those Red Wings Cup runs, we don't talk about our contracts. We talk about how we all bought in together to win together and add to the group. And he said that strategically during the Nylander contract negotiation because he thought he had the type of personalities that wanted to win more than anything else, and that they would hear him on that, and that he'd be able to secure that cultural kind of buy-in to be like, we all take fractionally less because we recognize the pie is so much bigger if we all win in Toronto. And everyone in the fan base understands that's true. But for some reason, face to face with a lot of like some of the biggest sharks for agents that exist in the NHL, Shanahan was not able to secure that kind of buy-in.
It's
That
honestly painful to listen to it. Like it actually hurts me inside to hear like you just outline the exact things. Like you knew at the time and you just couldn't do it, even though they were RFAs.
There's
He had
two
all the
things
leverage.
for that though. Like, okay, one, that's a two-way street. Like you say, he's unable to secure that buy-in. Like at a certain point, someone else has to say yes to the other side of that equation. So, like, yes, he failed in that coercion effort, persuasion effort, whatever you want to call it. But it's possible that no one could have succeeded. Like it's possible that these guys and their agents, they're of a different generation and they simply
And you
were
trade
not going
them.
to do that.
They're the only ones of this generation.
Okay,
No one in the league has done what these top guys have done. Who,
and that and
which
all
start?
what they've done is try to make a lot of money. Like I don't
Yeah,
begrudge them that at all. Like I think there's this a weird villainization of them when it's like everyone in the world, generally speaking, and you're right, there is a bit of a different culture and there have been different examples on
the,
other teams, but
the
a human
villainization is
being.
asking
I
for the
I
moon and then not delivering the moon
I don't
back.
think it's a weird villainization at all, Nick. Like think about I think it's honestly short-sighted, um, chasing dollars and not really thinking about cents.
But I think the norm is weird. Like you
But
guys are right.
think
This
about
is like
Nick, think
no
about this.
against the norm, but I think the norm is weird. In most situations, guys in most
How much
industries, guys try and
how
people like to make as much money as they can. I don't think that makes them
sure,
assholes.
but how how much easier would Mitch Marner's last 10 years of his life been if he took even a nominal perceived discount? Like
A
he
hundred
wouldn't
percent.
feel it. He would not feel it at the end of the day. If he had advisors around him that told him at the end of the day, if you buy in here, number one, Mitch, is this where you want to be? Is this where you want to be for the rest of your career? Ideally, do you want to win in Toronto? Do you want to be a homegrown hero, Maple Leaf? And I think he would have said at the start of his career, absolutely. The way to do that was not to get egotistical about it. It was not to start debating dollars and cents at a granular level to the point where it became so heady and it became so full of one-upsmanship that it was like you're actually hurting your own cause here. Like you're not making your life any easier inside this market. If you commit and you buy in with the group of players that you have here, which is an extremely special, unique group of players that have come together inside of the biggest hockey market in the world. If you buy in, you guys find a way to make it work in a way where the organization can continue to add to the core and you guys have the best possible chance of winning, you will be a hero in this city for the rest of your life. You will never pay another bill in your life. You will have sponsorship agreements till you're dead. You will never pay a restaurant bill. You will get an incredible reception inside this market. Like you're thinking about it so myopically when you care about like a couple $100,000 on the AAV.
I
It's
get
an
that, but
incredibly stupid
if
way
there
of
was
looking at it.
if there wasn't a pandemic that hadn't happened, the likes of which hadn't happened in 100 years, like I don't think that this conversation, like they would have gone up, the cap would have gone up, the premise would have. I'm not saying it would have worked and these guys would have delivered, but the premise of the contracts would have made sense. The way that Nylander's contract and like you can say Reinhardt signed for less and like that looks, you may not find it to be ideal, but Nylander's contract, if he stays good now, is going to broadly be fine because of the way the cap is going up. And
Marner
that
made so much more than Mikko Rantanen at that time
It
that
was sickening.
even had the cap even had the cap gone up, like it was still relative to the market.
hats off to
And
him.
yeah, but I think to the
No,
other side
I
of
don't
it.
give. I don't. I have zero respect for that. I'm sorry. I have
No,
zero
that's
respect
fair.
for it.
But
I'm a
Alec,
pro labor individual. I'm
but
not pro management.
but
Get the
Alec and
money.
Nick, I think here's the difference. Like we're talking about Shanahan and his tenure and the era. Nick, I think every player wants to get paid the bag and as much money as possible. I just think at the end of the day, properly run organizations say we have standards and we're not doing it. And if you don't like it, you can leave. And the Leafs didn't do that. They caved. They didn't sit there and look at Mitch when the offer sheet threat was coming out and his agent was like, having Dreger and whatever shill for him publicly. They didn't come out and fight any of it publicly. They went, okay, we are going to bend over and take this instead of sitting there and saying, that's not how we do things in Toronto. If you want to play for the Leafs, that's a privilege, which it is in this league. Like, make no mistake about that. So, like, those benefits Alec was talking about is like the tip of the iceberg of being a hero in Toronto for guys who've accomplished not very much over the past 30 years. And they didn't do that. They ultimately caved and said, sure, we'll pay you. We're just happy to be here. Instead of like that is really like error, like, you know, the ultimate error of the Shanahan era. And then further to the point is after they do it, they trade Nazem Kadri. And as bad as the trade was, I think the reason I flag it is I think that trade had serious consequences for how they were terrified of losing another trade after they lost the Naz trade. And it was like, we're not going to trade these guys because they're going to go somewhere else. And Mitch is going to get 100 points and Willie's going to be second in the league in goals, or, you know, even Matthews is going to score 69 or whatever the case is. They're like, we're not losing another trade like that. And so they held tight, and then they constantly, you know, moved everything else around those guys and everything catered towards them. And, you know, at no point did those players all got better and they physically matured. I just don't know if they ever like mentally matured, right? It's like to this day, our you know, the season ended. Did we hear Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner or William Nylander explicitly come out and say, I was not good enough?
There were a lot of passengers on the team.
That's what
I heard.
There were a lot of passengers or other guys or this, that, whatever. Like, I was included in it, but like there were a lot of passengers, but there wasn't just a straight up, like, it's me. Like, I'm not talking about the teammates. I'm not talking about other things. Like, I was not good enough. And like, we've spent a lot of time talking about Mitch as part of this, but like Matthews is just as culpable. And I don't know if we'll have like this could be an episode in and of itself, but this is the first year that, in my estimation, Matthews has really felt heat in the market. And I know at the time last year when Matthews was named captain, I liked it. And I know Alec didn't. And I know there's a ton of reasons to sit there and say, yeah, you still should not like it. Like, there's nothing that he did that was captain-y in the playoffs. But the reason I liked it, a large part of the reason why I liked it, is because I felt the attention needed to be on him. Like, he's received such a free pass throughout all of the futility over the years, right? It's, you know, last year included. It's like, oh, he was hurt, he missed some games, and then they got eliminated to Boston in Game 7. We never heard about whatever that injury was again. He definitely didn't have any sort of surgery to the point that it was something like so significant. And it was just like a free pass for gone in the win. And to me, like, he has to be the straw that stirs the drink. And so I partly like it because this is the first year that he's actually receiving some legitimate heat in the market. Like, I think that's important. Like, Marner's almost certainly not coming back, realistically. Like, something crazy would have to change between now and then. And like, the eyeballs have to point to him, and like, he's got to be the guy. And like, it was not good enough from him across the board this year. Like, straight up, just across the board. We're talking about the team getting tilted territorially at lottery level team level, right? Like, it wasn't good enough. And like, that needs to happen this year. Like, he's got to be a lot better. Like, losing Marner is going to hurt in the regular season. Like, it's going to be on Matthews now.
Well, I think that in the past, you know, you think of how the criticism has been spread around this core four group of players, and we can get to Riley a little bit. It's a bit of a different case. That might be a different episode. But early on, you might have said, okay, there was a time where it felt like people were critical of Nylander because they didn't love the way Nylander played sometimes, and they felt like he didn't give enough effort defensively, and he was an easy target for that reason. And then he started being the one who would actually produce in these moments. And it's like, okay, it can't really be Nylander's fault. Then I think sometimes the criticism went a little bit to Tavares. Like, Tavares is a guy who signed a huge contract, and some of the other contracts are sort of based off of that in a sense. And he's sort of not necessarily delivering as that first line center on your second line. And so he became an easier target for a while. Next thing you know, he's getting a little bit older. And it's like, okay, well, you can't really blame Tavares for this. Like, he's not the one who's in his prime. It's these other guys who are in his prime. And we've already absolved Nylander. So now we've absolved Tavares. So then for a while, the Eye of Sauron here is just landing on Mitch Marner. And it feels like for, I don't know, call it, I don't know, 3-year span or something, it was just pounding down on Mitch Marner. Because it couldn't possibly be Matthews. Because Matthews is the best of all of them. And Matthews, you know, he's had some injuries.
He is the best of all of them.
Well, he is.
Yeah.
No, to be fair, he is. But you know what I mean? Like Matthews,
Yeah.
of course it's not Matthews. Matthews is the best of all these guys. And so Marner was the one. Tavares is old. Nylander has shown up. It must be Marner's fault. And I think that over the years, he's gotten a disproportionate, perhaps, amount of this criticism. And to be fair, you could say he has been the worst in terms of producing in these Game 5 ons or whatever. You can flash
He has
those...
been. And then you tack on the contract negotiations in comparison to the other guys, and it makes complete sense.
But he is one guy. He is one guy out of the 4, arguably the 5. And as you said, this year, now, especially with the 4 Nations thing kind of undermining Matthews' injury excuse a little bit, putting the C on him, it does feel like this is the year where things tilt on Matthews a little bit. Now, his Maple Leafs tenure may just be 3 more years. We'll see exactly how that goes. But Marner is probably out the door. I mean, he's out the door. I don't even feel like I need to say probably.
So before we get to that, to wrap up on Shanny, I think it's like pretty clear across the board here. It's like great job with the rebuild and some of the things you did off the ice early on. He built this great staff early on that had the organization trending in the right direction. And then when it came time to actually take those following steps, it was like your handpicked GM didn't get it done. You couldn't get buy-in from your top players. You constantly, you were scared of losing big trades from that point forward. And you moved everything else around except for the top guys. And here we are today. Like, I think that's a pretty...
Yeah, I would say broadly about Shanahan, I think he had some of the right general principles. Like, I like the idea of betting on high skill guys. I like the idea of being patient and not necessarily overreacting to what happens in a single season. It rolled downhill so much that the idea of let's be patient was no longer tenable, and they stayed on course. And I think that's ultimately what ends up costing them. Like, if they had traded Marner right when Treliving came in and had a different looking group and had sort of lost, but it looked a little bit different, maybe you would have survived. But it's like, we're running it back with the same guys and it doesn't work in the same way.
He called those guys. Like, Treliving was like already the hand dealt. It's like laughing today, listening to the Kyle Palmieri extension get it announced. And it was like, he inherited it from Lou. It's like, hey, welcome to the job. By the way, you have a 2-year extension waiting to be finalized for Kyle Palmieri. It's like, I don't want Kyle Palmieri. It's like, it's already done. We've already agreed to it. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess we're keeping the top guys. Thanks, Shanny. And then like off from there. So kind of like, that's what he's going to wear at the end of the day, that he bet on guys that ultimately didn't come through for him. So whatever, we could belabor that for the rest of time. I think do we want to go to Mitch
Treliving or Marner? I think it's one or the other. Treliving or Marner. Alec, your call.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about Marner. Like, I've settled. Anthony knows this well. Like, I've settled into a spot with it where I'm at peace either way. Like, either Marner looks at this situation where his legacy is obviously tarnished, and he says, I'm not taking no for an answer here. I want to fix this. Like, he has sort of a Nathan McKinnon style, I haven't won shit and I'm sick of it kind of moment. And he comes back on a contract that both sides sit down and hammer out together with a plan to, how we make this work in his hometown and how we change this narrative. Or he says, I'm fine with this. I'm fine with leaving this all behind exactly as it stands. And I'll take top dollar to play somewhere else where I don't have to handle all this smoke. And in which case, if that's his mentality, he should absolutely not be here. And the Leafs should not want to keep him here. Like, that decision will say a lot about him. Like, we can all move on knowing he wasn't the guy to lead the team out of this. Like, he can maybe be a guy who can be a part of a winning formula somewhere else. But if he's not down to figure this out, and he's not, this doesn't bother him at such a visceral level that he wants to fix it, then it was never going to happen here.
Can I make a slight tweak to that? Because I agree. Like obviously, it's like if he were to come back with humility and some humbleness and say like, look, like this is where I want to be. Like this is my team. I couldn't imagine playing anywhere else. I want to find a way to make this work. I understand that'll require a haircut of some kind, but I think we can do it here, and this is where I want to win. I would definitely be open to that. The odds of that happening are essentially slim to none, but in
0.
theory, I would be open to that. I think to the second part though, I didn't really get to this in the piece that I published today about the paths with Marner moving forward. But Alec, you might remember the title. Kiprios put out that article on Marner in the Toronto Star a few weeks ago, and I didn't want to like ultimately get into it in the article. It would be its own article in and of itself. But like Marner leaving to me is basically everything Kiprios said in that article. Like that's how Marner and the Marner camp feels. Like it's a well-known situation that's constantly alluded to on that radio show that Kipper is in tight with the Marner camp. Like that's publicly very clear at this point. And in that article, he's talking about how Marner's had it tough since day one, that, Babcock wanted Hannafin, not the small winger, that he didn't get his A bonuses on the ELC, that
Are we still talking
right?
about that?
And it's like, right? It's like those kinds of, it's like if he's leaving, like there's some level of like pettiness and
Yeah.
and like I didn't get mine and I was always treated wrong and I was always the one to be the scapegoat and everyone, piled
You were
on
overpaid
me.
for 6 years.
He was the highest paid winger in the league for 3 years, and he wasn't the best winger in the league. So, look, I'm not saying I agree with any of it. I'm saying like I think that there's this mentality from that camp that's like
Yeah.
we've been the ones that have been shit. Like it's us that have been treated unfairly, and it's like a delusional, right? It's not like we're talking about like the other hand of the reality of it's like, hey, if you were to come and look at this and say like this is where I want to be, like this is my team, this is where I'm from. I want to find like this is where I want to win. I want to find a way to make the numbers work in order for us to do that. 100% open to that. The odds of that happening are like slim to none because they genuinely think the other thing. It's like I didn't get mine at the beginning. The first coach was mean to me. The fans were mean to me after I held out. And it's like, you hear these stories come out of, it's like, oh, well, Marner was, walking his dog and like someone like shouted something to him on the sidewalk. It's like, yeah, that kind of comes with the territory of being a public figure. I'm not saying I endorse it. I'm not saying that the person should have done that, but I'm saying like you getting like shouted at because like you're holding out on the team and like pillaging for more money and then you appear on every commercial known like and it's crystal clear kind of what's happening and like what matters to you, and then the fan who by the way like helps run the industry because without the fans paying you guys got nothing. Like yeah, like you're like there's a roundabout way where fans are allowed to voice their displeasure as well. So you just kind of look at it and go like, yeah, like I'm at peace with it. Like if you don't want to make it work or you think the market's too tough or like any of this crap, it's like, well, then this isn't the right place for you.
I would like to present a counter that I don't think either of you or potentially our listeners will like, but I do think that it's important for the sake of balance. I want to say one thing. I don't like
I
Mitch
don't like
Marner.
it. I don't like it, Nick, already. Whatever
I
you say.
I don't like Mitch Marner. Like I don't like his personality. He doesn't seem like a cool hang. I find him to be annoying. And I understand all the frustrations with him as a player and how he is not produced to what he's being paid. I will say I have a little bit of empathy for Mitch Marner because he like they say that happiness is reality minus expectations. So he had every reason to expect that he was going to have the perfect hockey life. He gets drafted by his hometown team. The next year they win the lottery. They draft a perfect player for him to play with. they're starting to develop an incredible young core. Everyone
I'm sorry,
tells
what should
them,
I be empathetic about here?
Okay,
What am I missing?
I'm saying reality minus expectations. He's set up to believe that he is going to, like, he dreamed of being the kid who is the one who breaks the curse of years and years in Maple Leafs. He's imagining this for years, and it never happens. Like, it never happens. Like,
Why didn't it happen, Nick?
He's one player. Like, he didn't do enough. For sure, he didn't do enough. But like, he has to be so frustrated that this has never happened the way that everyone told him basically his whole life that it was going to happen this way.
If he didn't push for more money, they could have afforded more depth. And
they could have It's like what, a million less. They would have got one more fourth liner.
No, he should have been making like $2 or $3 million less. Like, that's a legit player over that time period.
A bottom six guy. Like,
yeah, their bottom six was shit every year.
He gets booed off the ice in his hometown in his final season. Nick, season with the team.
They're losing 7-game series on the absolute thinnest of margins.
Nick, if you could look at me and say there was a single series where that guy was a dog, if you were like, man, like that guy was unbelievable.
He didn't perform. He did not perform.
Right. So he is one player. So he's not the only reason that they lost. But for what he could control himself, he never did it.
I'm just talking about him, the human being. Like, if I were him, I would probably want to leave this situation too, because my dream has turned into a nightmare. And is it my fault to some extent how this has turned into a nightmare?
If I was him, I'd be like, 100%. I'm not
100%.
leaving like this, because I don't know. That's, I guess,
I would
how
say I
was built.
Go somewhere where I'm appreciated.
I'd be like,
respect if he did that, but I don't think he's going to.
I'd be like, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm figuring it out here. Like, I'm not getting run out of town. That's how I would do it. Like, it doesn't matter how I would do it, but like, I hear all the time, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't put up with that shit. I'd be like, you know what? I owe these guys. That's how I'd view it. And I'd be like, I consistently think that there's not a point where these guys like don't lose sleep at night in the off season about how little they've accomplished.
I think I genuinely think he cares.
That,
it didn't work out, but I think he cares.
I don't.
To Nick's point, like, I have not lived Mitch Marner's life day to day. I don't know how affected and exhausted he feels by being a career-long Maple Leaf who's overpaid and can't deliver when it counts. I get that, but and I will say that, like, it's not like Matthews or Nylander, in that like Matthews takes off to Arizona, Willie takes off to Sweden. Neither kind of grew up knowing the magnitude of all of this in the same kind of way. Like, they've definitely learned about it intimately since they've gotten here, and they've probably come to appreciate and respect it, but it's not like deep in their bones in the way that it would be with like any of us on this call, or with Marner, in terms of like people who have grown up and lived our whole lives inside the Leafs market. And then you add in like the personality piece, which is like, when I hear Willie or Matthews dismiss something as if they don't care or they're unaffected by the outside noise, I kind of believe them to an extent, like especially Nylander. Like,
I believe it with Willie 100%.
100% with Willie, for sure. But that's not always in every case a good thing, but it's probably more a good thing than not in the market where like having genuine self-confidence and the ability to tune out noise, I think, is to some degree an asset. When Marner tries to play that same type of angle with the media, it immediately comes off to me as feigned or phony. Like, it's the encapsulation of that.
He's a terrible PR guy. He's really bad at representing himself in that way. There's no doubt.
It's the encapsulation of that meme where it's, I'm not mad, please don't put it in the newspaper that I'm mad meme every time he talks about it. And I know, here's where I would maybe push back a little bit. Like, I know I've heard the insiders say that he has one foot out the door already and something significant would have to change for him to stay. And I'm not questioning their intel. I'm not saying that they're even likely to be wrong. But I guess I would also say, like, Tree Living's press conference didn't put us like in another direction there at all either, in terms of what is likely to happen. But there's like that little nagging part of me that still says, like, I really wonder if Mitch is fully there on leaving in his heart of hearts. Like, it's the only place he's ever known. He has to feel some sense of like, I need to resolve this narrative around me about the playoffs. It's kind of burning me up inside to fix it. And again, if he doesn't, then he should definitely leave.
But he can go fix that somewhere else too. Like, he can go be good in the playoffs. Yes, it can.
It literally will never matter.
It might not matter in this market, but in the whole NHL, if he goes to some other team and he has 3 great playoff runs, I think that it won't matter. And
It'll
one of them
never
is a cup.
matter. It'll never matter in his heart. I'm telling you right now.
You see
And then
now
on top of that,
now you
like,
care about his heart. Now
I
that
don't
it's
care.
about
I'm
I
telling
don't care
you.
about his at all, but
I'm just telling you.
he's a new father too, and like as a new father myself, I don't have the millions of dollars that Mitch Marner has in terms of supporting, getting all the support in the world with my baby. But I do know that, like, regardless of your finances, you gain a new perspective on the importance of family and wanting your kid to grow up around his grandparents, his aunts, his uncles, so on and so forth. So I really wonder if the Marner camp, to some degree, might be playing the leverage game to the nth degree, where they go, and this wouldn't be out of their character as we know it based on their history. Like, they almost certainly want to collect a bunch of offers and drive up this crazy bidding war with the soaring cap that's looming and all that. I think Darren Ferris calls it conducting a full market valuation. But I wonder if they might overplay their hand a little bit, where Mitch might actually, when
They
push
might.
comes to shove, when it goes, you're gonna fucking move to another city. You're gonna move to Carolina and play hockey there for the next 10 years of your life. Like, I wonder if he sooner stay at the end of the day. But the thing is, they might overplay their hand with it because the Leafs at a certain point on their side of it have to move on. Like, it may not even come through free agency. It may come through trade maneuvering and all that kind of stuff at the draft, right? Like, it may not happen directly in FA, but Marner's camp is going to push him. Like, Marner's agent and the people around him are going to push him to try to get to the open market and see what's there and hope that the Maple Leafs kind of match whatever the offer is that's out there so he can stay. What if the Leafs have to move on before that? And at the end of the day, Mitch didn't actually want that. Like, I wonder to some extent if that's part of it, where, like, I could see a scenario where Mitch doesn't actually want to leave. He just wants to get, or
For
his
sure.
party wants to get the absolute most amount of money he can out of the Leafs instead of leaving.
That's the
I mean,
catch 22
would
though.
be
It's
in
always been that, right? It's like, yeah, I want to be here and this is where I want to play and this is the team I cared about growing up and all those. But like at the same time, I want to milk every last dollar and fans don't respect that. And you could argue whether they should or shouldn't, and that's fair. It's like, well, someone's trying to make the most money that they can. Like, fair enough to them just on a human level. But then there's the expectations that come with that, which is to say, if you're going to sit there and say, pay me like I'm one of the best players in the league, when you play the Florida Panthers in round 2, you need to be one of the best players in that series. And ultimately, he wasn't. It's like I said, it was like they were kind of similar to Barkov and Reinhart. And that was true. But like, I also didn't think Barkov and Reinhart were particularly unbelievable. They just kind of like, they just kind of neutralized each other. And that was kind of the end of the story. But then at the same time, Florida would mix in. They'd be like, oh, you're going to go against Anton Lundell for a little bit. And they didn't dominate. Like, they should have been spitting on that. Like, if I'm very curious to see if Florida dares to put Anton Lundell against Connor McDavid for large stretches of this series. And
I don't think they'd be wise to.
And if McDavid absolutely runs them over, it's like I saw like a Kevin Bieksa story. He's talking about Patrick Kane, and I forget who the defenseman was on Vancouver. Might have been Aaron Rome. I don't know. But anyways, Vigneault tries to match up a defenseman like that against Patty Kane, and Kane skates by the bench, and he's like, "Really, Elaine? Like, that's who you're putting against me?" And like, you hear all these guys in like the NBA where it's like, "That's who you're guarding me with tonight? Like, I'm going to embarrass you." And they're just like, no swagger for them to. And Lundell's a good player. I'm not saying he's not. Like, I really like Anton Lundell. But I'm just saying, if you're sitting there saying I'm one of the best players in the league and I'm worth X amount of money, then you need to absolutely dominate that man. You do. Period. End of story. They literally put their best defenseman against William Nylander after the first 2 games, which in part changed the series. They were like, the guy we need to worry about the most is William Nylander. He was the best player on the ice in the first 2 games. They put their best defenseman.
If Marner Matthews destroy the Lundell line in the second pairing of Florida, they sit there and go, well, this didn't work out.
We're in a blender.
They have all sorts of questions to ask of themselves. If the Leafs top players who are paid to outplay those players you just mentioned actually deliver on that promise, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't. And that's a huge pivot point in that series.
That's how it's supposed to play out, and it didn't.
That's how it's supposed to play out, and didn't play out that way. And it's I guess it's overkill a little bit at this point to harp on Marner's kind of playoff style in terms of, like his tendency to go east-west and want to slow the game down at a time when it's all about playing fast and north-south. But to me, the best playoff players don't try to find space, which is kind of Mitch's tendency. They try to, Mitch tries to collect a puck and find the open space. The best playoff players go and make space for themselves when there is none otherwise. Like that,
Yeah.
that Barkov versus Orlov battle that went viral the other night is a great example. But I also saw like two examples when I was watching that 6-1 Edmonton win over Dallas, that blowout game. One was when the game was still in the balance for Dallas, when Mikko Rantanen stepped over the boards. I think it was 2-0 Edmonton at that point. He skated right into a pile of Oilers players at the goal line in the Edmonton zone. He shouldered one of them aside and kicked the puck back out in the middle for a goal that made it 3-1 or 2-1 at the time. I can't remember what it was. And I was going like, that's exactly what Mitch Marner would never do with the game on the line. And like a Draisaitl at one point in that exact same game, under the aggressive pressure of like that Dallas penalty kill, he literally took a penalty killer on his back, like invited the pressure on his back, bumped him off his back, flipped it back into the middle into all this space he had just opened for the power play unit. And
it was Colin Blackwell, ex-Leaf. Just
he was like, go ahead. I'll invite you onto my back and then throw you off and bump a pass back into all this open space that I just opened, and guy rips it in the net. Like Marner, to me, Marner has like, what is it now, 5 or 6 goals in his last like 50 plus playoff games. It's not hard to see why when you watch the best players in the league and what they do when space is at a premium. He does not do it he does not do what is required. Like, we know where the goals are largely scored in the playoffs. Like, when Marner goes to the net, it's to show that he was there or to say that he was there. It's not to actually go in there and win a battle, to battle his ass off to win a second or third opportunity and force the puck over the line. And that's why he has 5 goals in 55 playoff games. Like, when you watch Draisaitl and McDavid play, you see it fully. If Marner was
it's 13 and 70 total, by the way.
Yeah,
not
but
that
like,
it's much better, but still.
In the last, 5 runs? What does he have? 6 goals?
He has a little bit more, 7.
Okay, well that changes everything.
Put a little respect on his name.
But like, if Ryan Nugent Hopkins didn't have Draisaitl and McDavid doing what they were doing in front of him, he would look like shit too. But instead, he's been a point a game player for a lot during their run,
making like $5.5 million.
Yeah, but he's making $5.5 million.
I think the ultimate, this will be like moving forward to discuss, like while we're talking about this, while we're talking about their poor possession numbers, we're talking about Craig Berube and like the system that they're trying to put forward. It's like he wants them to be a forechecking team. Like Brad Treliving talked about Florida. Like he also wants a forechecking team, but it's like, who's good at forechecking on this team? Like I'm not saying that just to single out Mitch, like go across the board. It's like William Nylander when he wants to, Max Domi when he wants to. Like he took like 4 months off this year, Max Domi. Like that's unacceptable, right? It's like Nyes can do it. Bobby McMahon can do it, but they're trying to be like Pontus Holmberg gets minutes because like he just like works hard and tries to get in on the forecheck, and Berube loves it. It's like, if you're trying to build this team, like then you need to bring in the guys that can actually do it.
You can't be Florida without having Florida guys. And that doesn't mean that I'm advocating going getting Sam Bennett. And I'm sure at some point we're going to talk more about kind of off-season targets for this team, because the rebuild, what they really have right now is not rebuild, obviously, but like re-tinker here. What they have is cap space to use. So it's largely going to happen in free agency. I do think that we need to leave it there. We've spiraled in various directions. We have missed some of the targets, but we hope that you guys have enjoyed it. We will be back with you at some point soon in the offseason to cover everything we've missed. And, again, the free agent pursuits ahead. We appreciate it a lot when you guys leave comments, reviews, subscribe, watch on YouTube, these things that help us grow, keep the show healthy. And as I said, we'll be back with you again soon.